Welcome to the ATA podcast, where we talk to former elite athletes sharing their insights and wisdom derived from successfully transitioning into life beyond the game. So a very warm welcome to the Athlete Transition Accelerator podcast. Once again, Carl and I are delighted to be joined by another fascinating guest, and we're really excited to be talking with Bernarda Brčić, a former professional volleyball player, a lady who has challenged herself to play in, from our research, no less than 6 different countries, played professionally in Italy, in France, Romania, Slovenia, Switzerland, Croatia. We look back at your journey and we see 7 Croatian league titles, 6 national cups, and an international player with the Croatian national team. So congratulations. It looks like it's been a stellar career, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here today.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to discover this kind of podcast because it's very interesting to listen. I listen to many of your shows already by now, and I'm happy that someone is talking about this topic because I think it's very interesting, and just listening about other athletes' experiences as well.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you, and I'm also delighted that you've given me the permission to call you Bernie from this point on. But Carl and I, with our Northern England dialect, the last thing we want to do is to be stumbling over and infuriating you with a mispronunciation. So, and thank you for your kind words. That's the whole raison d'etre for the podcast, Bernie. You know, we know that very few people walk a path alone, that people have been there, they've done it ahead of them. But our mission is to give people the insight and the access to those stories so that hopefully the transition from their sporting chapter into industry, into business is less daunting, less full of fear and more full of excitement. So before we move into those sort of next steps, we always ask every guest just to cast their mind back into the career. You've had a phenomenal career over many, many years. There'll be all manner of highs and lows in there. But if we asked you to pull out 1 or 2 memories, 1 or 2 moments or achievements that really fill you with a sense of pride now, what comes to mind on that question, Bernie?
Well, it's hard to pick one or a few. I would say the first great memory was, of course, winning this championship of Croatia for so many years. That was, I was still a teenager, so it was a great experience to be part of that. Then the second big step for me was just leaving Croatia at the age of 21 to move abroad and play professionally. And then spending 11 years abroad, playing around Europe, around the world. But if I have to pick one title or something like that, I would say definitely the Mediterranean Games with national team, 2018 in Tarragona, we won the gold. And I would say few finals, winning the championship of France, winning a cup, a French cup as well. Yeah, just titles.
So many to choose from. That's the lovely thing when you have a career. So just before we move on from then, so you were talking about playing, when did you actually start playing the game? Because it sounds like this is something that you've been doing for a very long time. When did you actually start playing at a serious level, at a competitive level?
Well, I was invited first time to the national team when I was 15 for the juniors. I was playing for juniors national team, and then I had my debut as a senior national team when I was 17.
Wow!
And ever since I was part of the national team until I guess my last year was when I was 30. Then I decided to retire from the national team.
Wow. Yeah, well, congratulations, because that's a phenomenal career. We could spend the whole podcast talking about all your experiences as a professional athlete, but obviously we're going to move on from there. So, Carl, I know you'll pick things up from this point.
Yeah, I mean, well, what a career from the sounds of it. I think just the Mediterranean Games.
Yeah.
I mean, that just sounds incredible within itself, the Mediterranean Games. But obviously the purpose of the podcast is that period of transition and what life looks like outside of your professional chapter. So just give us an insight into where you are now, who Bernarda is outside of volleyball, and sort of what life looks like now in this chapter.
Well, I would say that I'm still ongoing this transition because I stopped to play just last season. So this is actually my first year without playing professional volleyball. And currently I am working as a beach volleyball coach in Switzerland, but I am as well ongoing some job interviews and just still exploring different skills, different topics, different interests that I have, and just still working on getting an actual job.
Now, a thought pops into my mind straight away, Bernie, when you talk about skills, and obviously you're in that process, you're very much living and breathing it. You've only just recently brought your professional career to an end and you're exploring the options that are going to take you through to the next chapter. So something we often talk with athletes as they're going through this process is transferable skills, things they might be aware of, and sometimes things they're not aware of that they have developed and honed in their professional sporting chapter that can serve them very well when they move into their next chapter. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm just curious about your thoughts on this. For somebody, and it's really admirable that you've taken yourself at a young age, you said you were 21, and you've played in all these different countries, different languages, different cultures. I spent a bit of time playing rugby in France. It's a very different culture to playing rugby in the UK. So I would presume that's really enhanced your ability to adapt, to be agile, to be open-minded. And these are all skills that would serve anybody well in any role. What are your thoughts on that, Bernie? Because it must have been a fascinating journey to explore so many different countries and cultures. And do you see that as something now that gives you a strength as you start to look to this next chapter?
Yeah, well, when I was still playing, I was just playing. I was in this like bubble of athlete professional life, and I wasn't noticing skills that I was as well getting with living this kind of life. But recently, as well, working as a coach, which was the first time that I had to manage a group of people. It was not like when I was an athlete, I was always just coming to practice and just following someone else's plan. But now I was the one who had to come to practice and actually create this plan for a group of people and manage different personalities, different ages, different levels of playing and everything. And I was actually quite surprised how well it was for me. At first, of course, I was afraid. I was, just panicking a little bit, like, am I going to be able to do it? I never had to be someone who was leading. I was always just following the schedule, the program of the season of whatever. And I was actually quite surprised that I was able to do that in a very good level. Yeah. I would say, I think I got some nice feedback, so I guess I was doing some good job. So I would say that just like working with people, managing people, definitely handling different situations, pressure and change of programs, or I don't know. In beach volleyball, it's very important to follow the weather forecast, and maybe last minute it can change. So you have to change the whole program or the concept, or maybe cancel the practice. So I would say, yeah, it's easier to adapt in real life, already having this experience from before, even though I was not aware of this, that yes. I had it in myself.
And that's a wonderful example, because this is something that Carl and I see regularly when we're talking with people. They often use phrases like, I wasn't aware that I had this ability. I didn't really think about it. It's just what I've done. And I think it's no surprise that you can lead and communicate well, because when you think about the journey, you've walked into environments, professional teams, even the national team as a young lady, and grown and developed. And you've gone from being probably one of, if not the youngest, to one of the more senior and more established people. So the dynamics change, probably the way you present yourself, the way you communicate changes and evolves, but all those experiences are sort of in the bank that you can refer and reflect back on and draw those skills out to communicate with people. So no, that doesn't surprise us. So it's no surprise that you've got those communication skills, as we said, Bernie. Again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm always interested in the athlete perspective on this, that most of the athletes we talk to have a high level of resilience, which is forged by their ability to deal with injury, overcome injury, manage injury. Very few athletes are ever 100% fit once a season starts. And also deal with the pressures that come with professional sport, the pressures from the scrutiny, the on-court, the media, the supporters, the spectators. Everybody has an opinion. Sometimes your performance goes well, sometimes it doesn't. You have to deal with that, bounce back and keep playing. So would you agree with that notion, Bernie? Would you say that resilience is something that you have from your professional career that you can take forward as a result of what you experienced in the volleyball arena?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've dealt with a back injury my whole career. It was a protrusion in my lower back that always kept appearing every few weeks. I would feel it again, and I would be unable sometimes even to walk or to move, and I had to practice that day. And it was such a hard time. Now, when I think about the whole career, it was such a hard thing to carry with yourself, because you always have to be on your maximum. You always have to try to be perfect with how you sleep, how you eat, how you practice, how much you rest. Are you sleeping in the right position? Are you waking up in the right position? All of those were factors if I'm going to be able to perform good the next day. And just looking back now, that's probably the thing that I don't miss at all, the least, the most, sorry, the
Yes.
most. Sorry, my English is not
No,
very...
no, your English is very good. Don't worry. You keep going. I know we know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this pressure that you're constantly being put on that, I don't know, I start to have back pain on Monday, and it continues to be until Thursday. And I know that there is a very important game on Saturday and I have to play. And I just have to find a way to be better and to perform good. And it was just a constant pressure that I was first and foremost putting on myself, but then as well the people around me, because I mean, it's normal. Someone brought you in a club, or you are part of the national team, people are expecting from you to play. So it's really hard, because it was really hard, because in the end, we are all humans, and you cannot control all the time, all the things.
No.
So that's the thing that is definitely easier now in let's say this normal life, but it's still with me, because I continue to be this kind of perfectionist that just needs to do everything right and correct in order to perform good, even in normal life. So
yes,
I would say, yeah, it's still with me, this resilience and this discipline, and
that's exactly the word I was going to say, Bernie, the discipline. So I think the resilience side, so many athletes will relate to what you said, and people who have never been at that level of performance will probably think, hang on, if your back's painful, how do you keep going? So the fact you've had that ability to overcome adversity, to overcome challenge, to push yourself and find a way through is a skill set that 100% transfers into any role, because there will always be adversity and challenge. Hopefully not so many physical challenges, but that need for mental strength and resilience is applicable to so many things. So I think it's to your credit that you were able to do it, but it will serve you well in the next chapter. And then as I was listening to you there, I was thinking very much around discipline, and it takes discipline. And anybody who plays top flight sport has to have it. Somebody who's played for as long as you have undoubtedly has to have it. And one of the things Carl and I always talk to people about is having the discipline to invest in themselves and to take time away from those core areas of training and recovery to prepare for their transition. So are we right from our research, Bernie, that you've invested in yourself with a degree and also a master's degree? So you've spent time making that investment. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I decided still when I was playing, I think I was 27, that I would like to have some kind of degree by the end of my career. I had my bachelor's by that point, but I
Right.
wanted to do as well my master's degree. So I did a master's degree in a business school, and I finished marketing and sales.
Nice. Good for you. And how, just because this is always the conscious not to put words in your mouth, but one of the challenges we get from athletes who are still competing is, I don't have time. I have to focus on my nutrition, my S&C, my analytics, the physio, the injury prevention, the injury recovery. There's so many things on the elite athletes to-do list. I don't have time for anything else. But you've just alluded to there doing a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. So what would be your message there? Is it a fair assumption that you still competed at the highest level? You just had the discipline to find those pockets of time to invest in your studies as well as being a professional athlete?
Yeah, definitely. It was just a decision that came out of nowhere, I would say. It was just a moment where I realized, like, hey, maybe you should start doing something more than volleyball, even though I didn't have a lot of time because I was still in the national team and still playing professionally. But this small window of free time that I had, I decided to devote to studying. Good thing is that I found a program that was completely online, so I was able to do that.
Right.
So yeah, it was just this small part of my free time outside of volleyball and outside of, I don't know, just resting. I
Yes.
was devoting to at least some part of my days to study something new.
And we don't know you well, obviously, but when you hear that sort of story, it's interesting because as a prospective employer, let's say, talking to an athlete, to hear that somebody's had the discipline to maintain their career, but also invest in a degree and a master's, that says something. That says something about the character of you, the discipline that you have, and therefore that's attractive to employers. So it's another dynamic that we always say to athletes: you invest in you for your benefit, your growth and development, but it also is a compelling story for anybody looking at your journey to say, these guys can discipline themselves, they can organize themselves, they can do, several things at the same time. And I suppose the curiosity then, Bernie, is where does your head take you in this transition piece? Because obviously you've just mentioned there sales and marketing as a qualification. You also mentioned at the start of our conversation that you're currently in Switzerland coaching and around the beach volleyball. So are you having a bit of a heart and a head moment currently? Are you just exploring, seeing what's out there? Or do you see yourself being in coaching longer term? Do you see yourself moving more into traditional sort of sales and marketing? Are you aspiring to create a bit of a hybrid where you do different things together? Where does your head take you currently as you're in this very early in this transition journey?
Well, I definitely can't imagine not having sport as a part of my life. So that's where beach volleyball as an idea came from. I just wanted to stay. I played some beach volleyball as well next to indoor, but indoor was always, of course, my profession. Mm-hmm. But when I finished, I was just thinking like, hey, I would like to stay in the world of volleyball, but I didn't want, for the moment, I didn't want to stay in the world of indoor volleyball. So just because I was there for so long and I wanted to do just something slightly different. So I started coaching a little bit, and it turned out to be great. This summer I coached a lot. It was very good, and I can definitely see that as still like part of my life, because I just can't imagine going into corporate and just being there and not having any connection to sport anymore. So
makes sense.
I would definitely want and would like to stay in a world of volleyball, either beach volleyball or, I'm open to kind of like a project management or organizational of events in sport or something like that. That would be ideal. So ideally, I would like to have a normal office job or something that I would work on during the day, and then sometimes during the week in the evenings, just coaching.
Yes. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And I think what we're doing here often, Bernie, is we reinforce messages that there's no one size fits all in transition. We deal with some athletes that are somewhat disillusioned from their discipline. They've spent so long in it, they just need a break. They want to move away and they need space. Equally, we talk to lots of athletes like you that are still very passionate about it, have loved it. It's been a key part of their life and their identity for as long as they can remember, and they want to find a way to stay connected. And as we always say, it's about looking within. It's about finding the clarity and finding the plan that works for you. And you've got a clear sort of vision there of, well, can I blend a professional role with my coaching? And perhaps the coaching is the evenings and the weekends, and the professional role is in the working hours. So, no, that makes perfect sense. And I suppose what's an interesting follow-up to that, Bernie, is talking around identity, because we experience a lot of people struggling with a loss of identity when they step out of that structured environment, and staying connected to their sport is a way to help them adjust. I'm just curious how you feel about your identity, because you've mentioned on a couple of occasions in this discussion how young you were when you started. You were still a teenager, and you've gone right through into your 30s. So have you found it difficult, that sort of loss of identity, that you're not playing professionally anymore? How are you adjusting to that?
Yeah, that was a very challenging factor for me. I always used to read about these retired athletes who would go into depression or bankruptcy or anxiety, and I was always thinking, like, how is that possible? Like, because myself, I was so excited at the moment when I decided to end my career. I was so excited for my second part of my life. So I was just thinking, like, how is that possible that someone goes into depression? But little did I know that the identity loss would really hit me hard.
Right.
After finishing my season last year, I just decided that I'm gonna take a long summer off, just travel, because I never had time to actually travel and visit all the places that I wanted to see.
Of course.
So I took a few months just to travel, enjoy, and not think about anything, actually. And that was great. I felt great. The summer was fun. The fall was still fun. But then during winter, at the beginning of the winter, when the days started to be colder and just everyone was inside and not doing a lot, I started to feel kind of empty. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I just felt like something was wrong. And day by day, weeks by weeks, I was just not having any purpose. I was not doing anything. I was just existing. I didn't have any schedule that I had to follow. I didn't have anything to do. And then I realized that I was also getting more depressed and sad, and I just didn't know who I was anymore. And I started to think about it, and in the end, I decided to contact a mental coach,
Right.
a sport
Psychologist. Yes. Yeah.
Because I just needed to talk with someone, because I just didn't know from that point where to go, because for me, everything was so new. When I was 21, I left Croatia with one sort of community. And when I came back at the age of 33, I was still in the same mindset, like everything is still the same, but I came back and everything was different. My friends were living their lives. Everyone got new jobs, family, children. And I was still at the same point like when I left, when I was 21. So that was pretty hard to accept and to realize that I'm at that point. And honestly, to get out of the victim mentality. Like, I started to talk to myself as, this is not fair, I didn't deserve that, and etc., etc. But that at one point I said, okay, stop. You chose this life. this was your decision. You have to as well do something about it. And then I started to talk with my mental coach, and she's really great, and hi to her, and all the best words about her. And she told me one great thing. She said, you have to choose one way and start with it, even though it's wrong. Maybe it's wrong, but you just have to do something. And that made me realize that the perfectionist inside of me was afraid to choose one way to go, because I was not sure if that's the right way. But she opened my eyes with saying to me, like, hey, just start something. If it's wrong, you have another 60 years to change something, you know?
Exactly.
But that opened my eyes, and that made me realize, like, hey, okay, I'm gonna start. And from that point, I started to do some courses about marketing as well. I started to be more intense with beach volleyball coaching courses, and that was something that really helped me and pushed me through this, I would say, a depressive episode of my life.
Well, I think, Bernie, thank you first and foremost from both of us for your candor, because it's so much more powerful when an athlete like you articulates what you've gone through, and it personalizes it. So people listening to this will think, oh, so I'm not alone. This is normal. And it's completely normal. I was just jotting a couple of things down as you were talking. You've talked about a bubble a lot. And so it's very common for people to feel this when they come back out of that bubble. And you talked about they're going back into the community. Oh, everybody's moved on. And that's very natural because time has passed. People have got married or had children or changed jobs, as you say. But for some reason, we have this mentality that it'll be exactly as it was when I first stepped into the bubble. But that's okay to feel that. But practically, we know in our heart of hearts, it's not logical, especially if a decade or more has passed. And then you talk about that loss of structure. That's again something that we see. Initially, your timeline makes perfect sense to us. I just want to travel. I want to be free. I want to enjoy all the things that I couldn't do when I was very structured. And there's an absolute benefit to that. But we always say, let's find a little bit of structure once you've had that initial recovery. Because to go from I train here, I eat like this, I recover, to no structure is actually quite debilitating. So even if that structure is just, I like to go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week to keep myself ticking over. And then I think where you touched on then about that ownership, I think that's very powerful, that the only way forward is to take ownership and therefore start to make some decisions. And I love the fact that you said, well, I chose this life. So I chose to be an athlete, therefore there's going to be a transition because I chose to be that athlete. So how do I manage that transition? And once again, you gave the perfect illustration. You start to look at, well, what can I do? I'll start to study. I'll start to look at the sales and marketing. I'll start to get back into the coaching. And then you wrap that perfectly, Bernie, with there is no perfect route. Every athlete we talk to talks about, I took a step left. It wasn't quite right. I took a step right. We haven't met anybody yet that took a first step out of sport and said, and everything clicked. It was the perfect role, the perfect life. I made one decision and the doors opened. It doesn't work like that. So again, the fact that you're saying, be okay with take a decision, make a step. You can always change direction and stay open-minded. And I like your notion, well, I want the professional career, but I still want to stay in the coaching. So stay open-minded to how that might look. So I think that's a really powerful case study in a few minutes of this is what transition, loss of identity can look like. And here's some steps to get out of it. So that was perfect. Thank you.
I think that segues nicely into our usual do's and don'ts.
Absolutely.
At that point. But firstly, I just want to reiterate what your mentor, your psychologist mentioned, which was just pick a path and go. And if it doesn't quite sync, it's not quite for you, then stop and switch, do something else, explore something else. And that sort of aligns nicely with something James and I always pose, which is who says your next chapter has to be, who says your sporting chapter has to be your best? Because it's, and I'll sound like a broken record, I'll say this every single week, but everybody leaves their sport thinking, well, it's never going to be any better. That's going to be my best chapter. But to your point was, you've probably got another 60 plus years outside of it. And if your mindset is, well, that's going to be the best chapter, now it's just, let's see what happens, it's going to be debilitating. It's going to cause a lot of problems, huge amounts of problems. So who says your sporting chapter has to be your best? You can be and do whatever you want, just explore. It's exciting now, right? It's exciting. But now at this point, we always ask about do's and don'ts. And the whole point of this podcast is to utilize the benefit of hindsight. James always says, no path is untrodden. You're not by yourself. It's not a unique situation. There's people that's been there and done it and has advice. So if we're just sort of digging into your story of transition, and we're looking to give some advice to the younger athletes that are currently living their life, what would be some of the do's that you would suggest around preparing for life beyond sport? And what would be some advice around don't do these sorts of things, don't fall into that little trap? What would be some points that came to that point?
When I think about myself, there is one thing that I would definitely not do the same again. And that's while I was playing, I was studying, and I was just, just exploring a little bit what my life could look like in the future. But I just left it. I was thinking like, I'm going to play now. I want to finish my career in the best possible way. Then I will take a long vacation, and then we will see, because the stars will align and everything will fall into place. I wouldn't do it the same. It's not like that. You have to dig, you have to explore, you have to search within yourself. You have to understand your interests, and at least how can I say that? Just understand yourself better. Who are you outside of volleyball? I don't mean like you don't need to go aggressively into exploring the options, or I don't know, finding contacts or whatever, even though that's great. If you do it, that's great. But just understand yourself better, who you are when you're not in the gym. Like, what is your interest? What do you prefer? What do you like? What is your hobby? I noticed in myself, I didn't have any hobbies while I was playing volleyball. So I was just, from the moment when I stopped playing volleyball, I was like, I started playing tennis, and I realized, oh, this is great. I love tennis, this kind of things. But at the age of 33, I still didn't know what do I enjoy outside of volleyball. So I would say just explore the options while you're still playing. Just get to know yourself better.
Yeah. No, I think fabulous advice, Bernie. And we're all guilty of that. And we see this in business, and we coach people in business, and obviously we're working in the athlete space, that people neglect their hobbies and their passions. When we're children, we try everything. We're open-minded. We have different lessons at school. We have sometimes different clubs, different activities out of school. And for some reason, as we move into adulthood, a lot of that falls away. And we always say, understanding what you're passionate about, understanding interests outside of sport is good for your mental health. It's good for your clarity. It's also good for your performance. And so I think what you've experienced talking to the mental skills coach, and what we talk about in our mentoring and coaching all the time, is, who are you? What's important to you? You're more than just a professional volleyball player, or a professional cricketer, or a professional soccer player, or professional rugby. Who are you as a person? What excites you? What interests you? And that comes back under that headline of clarity. And once you have clarity, you can explore more efficiently, because you go and explore a little bit more about what's resonating. So I think that's great advice. And that takes us into, we always have a little quick fire couple of questions to bring things to a conclusion, Bernie. And one of the questions that we're always interested to ask is, what's the best piece of advice that comes to mind that you've been given? It could be something professionally, it could have been something in the sporting arena, it could have been life advice. It doesn't matter. But we're quite enjoying just tapping into this archive of insight and wisdom. So when we put that question to you and say, when you think back through your career, the journey you've been on so far, what's a piece of advice that sticks in your mind that comes to the fore when we ask you that question?
One advice that I would take now, but as well before, and that can also, I wanted to mention it in the question before, is to be kind to yourself. We as athletes, we are always taught to just try to be perfect in everything that you're doing. And that's, when you're playing a sport, that's challenging, but it's also very exciting. But as soon as you stop playing, that can give extra weight on your back to continue to try to still be this perfectionist. So I would say just be kind to yourself, accept that identity takes time, and don't compare yourself to others, because everyone has a different path. Just because you're not at the point where everyone else is, that doesn't mean you won't be in months. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So was the question the advice that I would take?
Well, you've given some great advice there as a case in point. So if there's anything else that somebody's given to you, by all means mention it. But I think anybody listening to this will say, absolutely, be kind to yourself and don't get dragged into that world of comparison, because there's that classic quote, comparison is a thief of joy. And I think that's so true. So yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice you've shared. But is there anything else that comes to mind? It sounded like there was another thought that you were perhaps about to share then, Bernie.
So one advice that followed me throughout my career, and I heard it many times, is just give the best you can. Doesn't matter if it's different than someone else's best, or it's not enough, or whatever. Just give the best that you can give, and then the feeling that will follow afterwards will be amazing. And I kind of accepted. I tried to follow this advice, and that was really something that helped me, because just giving the best that you can brings so much satisfaction, even though sometimes you lose or sometimes it's not enough. But just knowing that you gave the best you could is just an amazing feeling.
I think fabulous advice, and it ties in nicely to your comparison point, because again, Carl and I are very open. We see the same challenges in so many of our coaching and mentoring calls when we're working one-to-one with athletes. And we always say, when it comes to comparison, it is the thief of joy. Stop comparing yourself with everybody else, but focus on that mindset of comparing the you of yesterday. Where were you yesterday? If you give of your best, as you say, you will make small steps forward. Whatever you want to do, whether you want to learn to play tennis as a new hobby, whether you're trying to learn a language, a business skill, nobody starts as a finished article. Everybody starts at the beginning. So just compare where you were yesterday. Stop looking at where everybody else is, because there'll always be, we could go and find a professional tennis player now that you started playing tennis. What good's that? Let's look at where are you in the first couple of months of playing tennis, and are you getting better? And I think just going back to your earlier point about being kind to yourself, there's something that comes through a lot of our conversations that Carl and I have as well. Our brain is hardwired to go to the problems, to tell you all the things that are not going well, which naturally drains you into that comparison channel. And one of the simple questions we always throw back to people is, tell us what is going well. And it's just a sort of a reset of the mental software, because, we're so quick to say, this isn't going well. I haven't found a job. I don't really know what I'm doing. This. And we can stack all the things that are not going well. And there's a bit of a pattern into it. We'll say, but what is going well? And then you start, well, my body's recovering. I'm not having to train with so much pain. To a point you made earlier, I'm traveling. I've been to some places I've never had a chance to go. I'm more present with my partner, or I'm more present with my children, or I've seen some friends and family that I haven't seen. And once we start becoming aware of what's going well, it's much easier to avoid that temptation of comparison and to find some momentum. So they're just a couple of tips that we share, because you're articulating these problems, Bernie, and we're giving people comfort as best we can to say, you're not alone. Bernie's articulating them. So many people say to us, comparison, it's not going well. And we often say, as you said, just be a bit kinder to yourself. It's still very early in the transition.
Yeah, I would say just be grateful for whatever life brings you, because life is so unpredictable. And sometimes we are thinking, we all don't know how much time we have, of course. And it's just taking it day by day and taking out the maximum of each day is in the end for what I think is a great solution to feel gratitude and to be present in each day.
100%. Well said. Well said. So the final quickfire question, if it's relevant, Bernie, I know you've been in so many different countries and cultures and you've traveled all over the world, but we always like to ask people about a book. Is there a particular book through your life or through your journey that's had an impact on you that you would recommend to others? It doesn't matter if there isn't anything that comes to mind. It might be a podcast as opposed to a book, but is there anything that you would share with us there to say, yeah, there is a book, it's this?
I recently read a really great book that I would recommend to anyone who is in my position. It's called Micro Decisions. It's a book written by Shane Parrish, I would say. I'm not sure if I pronounced it good, but it's about just power of small unconsequences choices during the day that will bring a greater result in the end. So it's just, we as athletes, I guess, we are living big part of our life in autopilot, I would say, just following the schedules and routines. And this book teaches you to stop and to understand which part are you doing on autopilot, and maybe you should just stop and switch and just think about it and then have another result.
Like it. Perfect. And this is the beauty of the quickfire round. That's another book that's been recommended. I think there's been a good number that we haven't read, either of us. So that's another one going on the list. And again, it's what this podcast is all about, Bernie. It's helping other people. And that, once again, another great recommendation that will help people on the journey. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Bernie. So much insight and wisdom that you've shared. I know there'll be a lot of people, because there always is when we have guests on the podcast, that reach out, want to connect with you personally. Particularly if there's employers out there that would like to talk to you, then we would certainly encourage them to get in touch with Bernie. So what's the best place for people to find you? Would it be LinkedIn? Is that the best route for people to make an approach?
I am on LinkedIn as well, on Instagram. So whoever types my name and my last name will find me there.
Perfect. And we'll make sure we put the links and things in our show notes. So, Bernie, we wish you the very best of luck as you move into this next chapter. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Credit to you for all that you achieved in the sport. And I know with the discipline and the insight and the self-awareness you're already showing us today, you're going to have a very successful chapter as you move forward into the next stages. So thanks again.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a pleasure, and I will keep following you because I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. We appreciate that, Bernie. Best of luck.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us this week on our ATA podcast. If you found this conversation insightful and it resonates with your journey, please subscribe, follow the show, and stay connected with us for more insight, resources, and information on how we at ATA are supporting your preparation for life beyond the game.